In addition to cleaning up space on the drive, there's also a couple utilities you can use. Okay, the first one we'll look at here is the disk cleanup utility. Okay, this one is available by right-clicking on the drive within Windows Explorer. So let's say I want to do it to the C drive. I'd right-click, go to Properties. You'll notice it's on this first General tab right here, Disk Cleanup. So you can see I've got a terabyte drive here. I got 570 gigs of it free, so I still have plenty of free space. But for disk cleanup, when I click on that, it's going to take a little while to populate. Okay, but essentially it's going to go through and scan my computer to see what areas can alleviate some space for me. So one thing you'll notice in here is that once it actually comes up, is that most of the times you're not going to get a whole lot of space from running disk cleanup. Okay, there are some exceptions to that. For instance, if you have that user that you're working on the computer and they haven't cleaned out their recycle bin in 6 years, then chances are you've got a lot of stuff built up there. Okay, because users don't realize that that's still holding information. Okay, so you'll see a list of everything from temporary files to your recycle bin, your executable programs, your memory dump. All that will be available here in Disk Cleanup. Okay, and then you can choose what you want, and it'll show you at the bottom how much space is actually going to be alleviated by running this. Okay, so hopefully it'll be done here in a second and you can see it. So generally speaking, the more space that you're using on your drive, the longer this is going to take to populate. So if you've got a new drive with hardly anything on it, this should pop up pretty quick. Okay, but let's see. I'm obviously not in that case because I've got a little over 300 gig I'm using up on my computer here. Any day now. Okay, we may just go ahead and jump to the next slide so that you can we can keep on moving and then come back to this whenever it's finished. So why don't we go ahead and do that? So the next thing is actually dealing with disk or defragging of the disk. Okay, and basically what that means is defragment is when your drive is trying to store information and it's trying to keep up, so it just starts placing fragments of files at different locations. Okay, so for instance, let me see if I can't kind of draw this out for you. So let's say this is a hard drive, okay, because most of the time these solids or these magnetic drives are written on platters right here. Okay, so that platter is going to have a read and write head. Okay, so there's the read and write head there. So that platter is then going to spin. Well, that's not working, is it? Anyways, it's going to spin in that general direction. Okay, as it's doing that, files are going to be written on this platter here. Okay, so what fragmentation is basically where a file gets added there, 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 there. Those may all be fragments of one single file. At the time, that may be the most efficient way that hard drive can store data. But what it's doing is it's actually hurting itself in the long run, because with all these fragmented files, if you need to go back and get this file, it's got to stop and find all these different locations, which means it's going to increase your read and write time and everything like that. Okay, so fragmentation is definitely an aspect in Windows that is, or in any computer really, that can slow down your computer big time. Okay, so fragmentation generally only takes place in these magnetic disks. And magnetic disks, like I mentioned, are going to use platters, are going to use read and write heads, so there's moving parts there. Okay, the other type of drive is called solid state drives. Solid state is basically the same technology you have with USB drives or your thumb drives. No moving parts, so defragmentation or fragmentation is not even possible. Okay, because everything is written in one contiguous file. Okay, so, but with fragmentation, it's a little bit different. Okay, so just a couple terms to kind of help you understand this is first you have a cluster, okay, also called a file allocation unit, okay, which is a group of sectors on a file system. Okay, so the number of sectors in a cluster is going to be fixed. Okay, so a file is going to be stored in whole clusters. Okay, that helps improve the read and write time and everything like that. Okay, so any unused space at the end of the last cluster is called slack. Okay, it's wasted space. Okay, so as files are written and deleted from the drive, clusters are used, released, and used again over and over again. So with this, the moving arm is actually going to go around and move all over the drive to collect all these fragments of a file. Okay, so it's just like I showed you just a second ago. Basically, the reason it's going to write all these fragments is because it's going to try to use up all this slack at the end of the clusters. Okay, so what you have to do is you have to actually, oh, I apologize, you have to actually defragment the drive. So to do that, you would just right-click on your drive again, which is going to bring you back here. You'll go to the Tools tab, and then you have Defragment. Okay, defragmentation. So when you click on that, Windows 7, Windows 8 is going to look like this, where it's actually going to show you, how much is fragmented and everything like that. One nice thing is, starting in Windows 7, they actually scheduled it to where fragmentation or defragmentation is going to run at least once a week at 1 a.m. Okay, so really, if you're running Windows 7 and you've got it set to run there automatically, you shouldn't have to worry about fragmentation at all. Where this becomes an issue is with Windows XP or older. Okay, those you can go years without running fragmentation, and the problem there is that the longer you run it without defragmenting your hard drive, the more fragments you get, and the longer it's going to take to defragment. Okay, so if you want to defragment, it's as simple as clicking the button here, and it's going to start running it. Okay, it's going to analyze it first, and it's going to go through and defragment it. Okay, if it's run once a week, this should probably only take about 10 or 15 minutes. If it's one of those where first time you've run it in 6 months or a couple of years, I would walk away for at least a good couple hours because it's going to take a long time. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop that just because it has taken place once a week. So, anyways, kind of skipping back to our disk cleanup, it finally finished. So you can see here that it lists everything that I can remove off here. I've got temporary internet files. I can remove my recycle bins. See, I've deleted stuff here in the last couple of days. It's going to free up a lot of space. And then service pack information, setup files, thumbnails, update cleanup, Windows Update cleanup. So you can see I can actually free up 11 gigs of space. That's quite a bit. Okay, so all I have to do once I've picked what I want to clean up, let's see, I'll clean up those temporary files as well. And then anything else big. And then this is kind of up to you. Per user archive Windows error reports, system error reports, I'll go ahead and remove those. So obviously, it's going to ask you if you're sure. Once you do that, it's going to go through the whole process. Okay, this is another one I would kind of walk away from, especially if you're cleaning up like I am. I was cleaning up almost 13 gigs, so that's going to take some time. Okay, so just keep that in mind. All right, next section, or next thing for preventative is checking the hard drive for errors. Okay, so this will essentially go through and actually check the drive to see if there's any bad sectors, see if there's any errors on the drive, and try to fix them if at all possible. Okay, it's pretty simple to do this, so you just open up Windows Explorer again, right-click, go to Properties. You can get to it the same way you do with defragmentation. You click on Tools, Error Checking right here. So when you click on Check Now, notice it gives me two options: automatically fix file system errors and scan for bad sectors. Okay, so I can click Next, or click that, and then Start. Now, there's a catch here. If I try to run this on the drive I'm currently using, like my C drive, it is unable to run because, if you think about it, it's going in and it's checking file system, bad sectors and stuff like that. So I can't be using it at the same time. Okay, so it's going to prompt me to see if I want to run it the next time I boot up. So if I click Start, it's going to pop up with that message here pretty quickly. There we go. Can't check while it's in use. Schedule it. That means this next time you reboot this computer, it's going to run that error checking. Okay, so this is another thing that you want to do periodically. Once a quarter, twice a year, to be able to make sure that your system's running effectively. Okay, and then last couple ways is just freeing up disk space. Okay, uninstalling software, which we've already kind of talked about. Move data off the drive. Okay, if you've got a backup drive somewhere you want to use, move programs off the drive, use drive or folder compression. That's another thing that you can do, is actually right-click on a folder and compress that folder, which would save you disk space. Okay, then there's also the virtual memory page. Okay, so virtual memory again is basically where if you run out of RAM space, it's actually going to borrow some from the hard drive. Okay, so essentially what we mean by that is, if we kind of go to an illustration similar to what we talked about with our sleep mode. If this is our computer right here, and then this is our RAM, this is our hard drive. Essentially, if we have all these different programs running on our computer, we essentially use up all of our RAM here. Let's say we have 4 gigs of RAM in here. Okay, well essentially we've got so many programs open that we've used all 4 gig. Okay, so what happens is this page file is set aside a certain portion of our hard drive. Okay, so this would be our virtual memory. Okay, so it's just a portion of the hard drive that we're borrowing. So once we've maxed out this RAM here, then we're going to utilize this virtual memory to make sure that our system doesn't completely lock up or just lose all functionality. Okay, so we got to make sure that page file is set up correctly. But if you're running out of space, what you can do is you can move this page file. By default, it's set up to the C drive. You can move it to another drive that's plugged into your computer. So for instance, if you've got 2 physical drives in there, the other one is your D drive or something, you can move your page file to that D drive to kind of free up some space. Okay, so you can also lower the amount of virtual memory you're using as well. It's just kind of up to you. Okay, so that's enough for this section, or this part of Windows 10. We'll go ahead and pick up with the next part, which is dealing with backups.